Notre Dame just landed a 5-star offensive tackle. They're coming off 4 other big commitments, and they're not even done for this week.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Crossover of Locked On Irish and Locked On the Portal. I'm your host, Brian Smith, along with Tyler Wojcick of Locked On Irish. All things Notre Dame recruiting, national look. We're going to be talking about which top 100 recruits will end up in the Notre Dame class. Does Notre Dame sign a top 3 class? I think so. I'll explain why. I want to get Tyler's take on it. Olu Olubobola commits to the Irish. It is insanity how well they recruit offensive line, and that is where we start today, Tyler. Thank you for joining the show. I'm just going to read off a few names to you because I wrote this out. I'm like, I knew it was good, but Notre Dame's offensive line recruiting in the last 4 years is about as good as it can get. And if it comes to fruition that Olu Olubobola from St. Peter's Prep in New Jersey actually signs, he just committed to Notre Dame, he's probably going to be a third-team offensive tackle that is a 5-star. Is there another team in the country that, I mean, maybe Miami or Georgia, it could be possible there, but like most schools, he would be a day 1 starter. And kids are still lining up. Why do you think that is? I followed Notre Dame my whole life, and I'm still a little bit perplexed by this. Why do you think it is?
Well, when you look across college football, there are some schools who are known for specific positions. Ohio State and wide receivers are one of them. Every single year, they're putting out another first-round wide receiver. And Notre Dame is not quite at that level yet when it comes to the offensive line, but they have a great track record, right? Dating back to the Lou Holtz era. Joe Alt just went in the top 5 a few years ago. Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, those are first-round guys. And when you look at the guys that Notre Dame has brought in recent years, there could be a few more future first-round picks at the position. I feel like these offensive linemen across the country, they recognize that, one, they can go to a situation where they're comfortable at Notre Dame, they're going to get compensated, and more than anything, they're going to be developed. Joe Rudolph and just the entire Notre Dame football program have shown that if you come through that program and you are able to have success, you are likely going to make it in the NFL, and you're not just going to get drafted. You're likely going to get that second contract, which is the bigger deal than any of this. I know Notre Dame likes to put out that stat, and they do it every year, where it's like the total earnings of all the former Notre Dame offensive linemen in the league, and the number just keeps going up and up and up. And that is the type of thing that resonates with these recruits. So even though they're going to have to compete when they get on campus, and Olu is a perfect example because he's got Grayson McKeo ahead of him, who was a 5-star in last year's cycle. Will Black is only a redshirt freshman. He's going to be around for at least one more year beyond this year. Gerby Lambert, another former 5-star. But, hey, if you can make it at Notre Dame on the offensive line, then you're probably going to make it in the NFL, and I think that's why Notre Dame has been able to land all these guys.
It is truly incredible. But for the record, they bring in Anthony Knapp in 24. We thought he was going to be a guard. He starts at left tackle for 2 years. He wasn't even the top tackle in the class. They got Styles Prescott, who's a backup left tackle now. They got Gerby Lambert, who's projected to be the right tackle. I think he's going to end up being a first-round pick, maybe even after this year. It's possible. And then there's still Peter Jones. He would play tackle at a lot of schools. He can't even crack the lineup at Notre Dame as a guard. That's their 24 class. 25, they get Will Black, maybe the top tackle in the country. They get Strebig and Matty Augustine as well. Those guys can't crack the lineup. They would start at 98% of the schools, and then they just go out, you know what, just for fun, we're going to get Grayson McHugh, the top tackle arguably in the class of 26. And then they're going to get Olubobola, and they got James Halter. Now, I know he's a legacy. I've never seen any school in a 4-year period do what Notre Dame's doing at offensive tackle. And in my opinion, it is the most important position to recruit from the high school ranks, even above quarterback. And here's why. In the portal, you can get good quarterbacks. You can get really good quarterbacks. Outside of Jordan Seaton, how many elite tackles jumped in the portal, Tyler? Do you remember any? I don't.
Barely any.
For whatever reason, and it's an oddity, tackles tend to stay longer. Quarterbacks are just the opposite. I don't know why, because both of those are positions you don't rotate much. The linemen will sit there. Quarterbacks won't. So Notre Dame is in a great spot, and give Freeman credit. He said when he took the head job, it was going to be a lineman-driven program. And the offensive line is obviously rolling. That's not in debate. But in my lifetime, the spot that they've recruited the least is D-line. And all of a sudden, it's loaded. I mean, Keon Keeley is going to be a backup to transfer from Alabama. There was no way that was the case 3-4 years ago. Boubacar Traore, Bryce Young, the interior line, like Francis Bruce, a very coveted kid they brought in for the portal. They've recruited well enough. He may or may not start. Like, I think he will. But, like, it's crazy. Are you surprised at how well he's flipped the narrative of – I hate using this in some ways, but it's still funny. Notre Dame is definitely shopping in the same aisle as Georgia and all them, unbeknownst to Brian Kelly. What is your take on the defensive side of the ball as well?
I'm surprised at how it happened so quickly because when Marcus Freeman took over, I expected a big leap on the defensive line, and it didn't happen right away. Like, it took him a few years. They missed out on Keon Keeley, even though he was once committed to the class. They missed out on Justin Scott. He ended up at Miami. They missed out on Marquise Lightfoot. So it was pretty frustrating at the beginning because defensive line is obviously an area that they had not been super successful at recruiting in recent years. And then I think over time, after they continued to miss on some of these prospects, they realized they needed to change what they were doing. And whatever they changed, whether it's just making it a bigger priority, ponying up more money, I'm not really sure what led to it, but the results speak for themselves. What they did last year with Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Iwatade was exceptional. Both those guys look like hits already. Dunham could be the first defensive end off the bench this year, which is pretty crazy. And then they beefed up the interior with Elijah Golden and Tiki Hola. And then going into this year's class, it's like, okay, you did that once. That's good. But can you do it again? And at the pace that they're on right now, they might have a better haul. Now, some things need to go their way for sure. They need to close because right now it's only Aiden O'Neal, who is a great pickup. But I expect more good news to come down the pipe in the future on the defensive line. But if they really do land all of the guys that they're after, like Folorunsho, like Jackson Vaughn, like Abraham Sesse, maybe Braden Parks, Marcus Fagatu, if they all come to Notre Dame, we're talking about not just a group that's better than last year's. That could be an all-time class, at least for one position in the history of the Notre Dame football program.
It would be. It would probably rival like the 73 class that Notre Dame had. They had multiple guys like Ross Browner and those guys come in. It'd be kind of like that. There's nothing wrong with being in that category, by the way. But we'll probably hear for Notre Dame fans some good news on Folorunsho, I think, on Friday. He's supposed to announce everybody's picking Notre Dame. That's good news. The other good news before we go to break, there's an offensive lineman. It's still another one they might get this week. We're going to talk about that on the other side right here on this crossover, Locked on Irish and Locked on the Port. Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. Your outdoor space should feel like you. It's one of those spots you keep meaning to fix up, but never quite get around to. That's where Wayfair comes into play. They make it easy to find pieces that match the vibe that you want for your home. Whether it's trying to get some pillows for out there on the outdoor furniture, maybe you need a whole new set, maybe it's a different look, maybe it's a different picture in the window, whatever it is, they've got it. Even the desk that I'm using right now is from Wayfair, literally. And they can do it for whatever style, whatever budget you want, and they can deliver it right to your door. Thousands of verified reviews. It is very easy. And again, take my word, I'm using the desk that I got off of Wayfair. Now, your space can actually feel the way you want it to, somewhere you want to sit, relax, and have fun. Get prepped for patio season for way less. Head to Wayfair.com and shop all things home. Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style and every home. This show is also brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and you still got to fill that one position no matter what. Time is wasted. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach those people who actually fit what you're looking for with skills, experience, and location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here is the stat that will put it into perspective. In roughly the minute that I'm speaking with you, Indeed's data shows that 27 hires will be made on Indeed around the world. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates that match what you're looking for and get all the boxes checked with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. You will even get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Again, Indeed.com/podcast. Check it out. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this pod. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Check out the Everydayer Club down below in the description below for Locked On Irish, Locked On the Portal. You can get your pods on the go, Apple, Spotify, wherever you go with no ads. Check out the Everydayer Club. It looks like Notre Dame's offensive line class is insane, and it's probably going to get better. When I saw, I forget where it was one of the social media handles, Leighton Von Brandt, I thought there was a pretty good chance he would go to Florida. For those that don't know, he's a big-time tackle out of Delaware, originally committed to Penn State. That staff obviously blew up with the James Franklin situation last year. Well, the O-line coach goes to Florida. You're still going to recruit the same kids. He had an OB set to UF, Notre Dame, Penn State, a whole bunch of schools. Canceled UF, and all of a sudden everybody's saying trending to Notre Dame. So we're back on the offensive tackle thing again here, Tyler. If they get him this week to go along with, I'm just going to call him Olu from now on. I can say his name, but it's why run it? I've done it once right today. I'm just going to leave it at that. If they add him and they get, assuming, again, they're going to get Folorunsho, is there any reason, in your opinion, that Notre Dame doesn't end up with the way this is trending? And you talked about several of those players, Fakatu and Parks. I'm not sure about those guys. I wouldn't bet on that for Notre Dame at Oregon and USC and Ohio State. Those are still up in the air. But is there any reason if they conservatively they don't get a top 5 class? And I still think top 3. What do you say?
Look, top 5 certainly seems on the table, probably more so than I would have thought as recently as a month or two ago. But they're after a lot of big guys. We saw last year Notre Dame landed 4 5-star prospects. They got Dunham, they got Kari Adams, Joey O'Brien, and Ian Premer. And that's the number you really need to hit. You need to be in that ballpark in order to finish in the top 5. And right now, Notre Dame is after, and they're very close with so many top 100 guys in the country that I absolutely think that they can land them and then vault their way in to the top 5. And they're at premium positions as well. That's another key. Offensive tackle, premium position. Defensive line, specifically defensive end, premium position. And Notre Dame could be looking at 3 guys in the top 100 just at defensive end alone. And then if they're able to add David Folorunsho to the mix on Friday, that's another big win. Plus, they got the quarterback now, Champ Mons, and I think that he has a chance to move up the rankings once he's just able to play some damn football because he really hasn't played that much high school football yet. He played his freshman season. He played in the state playoffs last year. Because he reclassified, he only has 1 more season left. But I think he's going to move up the rankings because he's a really talented quarterback. And when those things start to happen, I think that's all of a sudden when you're talking about not just like a really good top 10 class, but a top 5, maybe even top 3. In order to get in the top 3, they basically have to land every single guy that they are a finalist for, even Fakatu and Park, some guys that might be on the fence right now. And I think they need one more big surprise, kind of like Olu, where they seemingly came out of nowhere at the last minute and got him to commit. And the one player who I would target for that level of surprise would be the linebacker Caden Henderson. If they do that, if they somehow shock the world and get him in addition to all the other guys who we've already talked about, now we're talking about a top 3 class.
I think Georgia and Notre Dame, just from following this nationally like I do on the portal, are the 2 schools that I would put there with A&M that are doing the best right now nationally. A couple other points. Miami's only going to take 20 to 22, I've heard. They've got a lot of players coming back for 27, so they won't have as big a class. Okay. Ohio State doesn't have Brian Hartline recruiting receivers anymore. Look, that matters. I know Ohio State fans don't want to hear it. Kids pick coaches, not the Buckeye symbol. It's just true. Look at their wide receiver recruiting this year. It's good, but is it 2021 to 2024 good? No, it's not going to be because Hartline is now in Tampa at USF as the head coach. Congrats to him. I also think that looking at the list, Alabama, you know how many OBs Alabama has for O-linemen right now, Tyler?
Just 3?
Alabama is no longer Alabama. I have – how is that?
Yeah, I saw that firsthand at the Rose Bowl. I was at that game when they got stomped by Indiana, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Even though going into that game, I thought Indiana would win, the way that they just physically dominated them on offense and defense, I was like, this is the end. This is truly the end of the dynasty.
Yeah, I think they'll be really good moving forward, but they'll be 8-4 to 10-2. They're not winning the title the way they're recruiting. LSU, maybe, but Kiffin, he's going to hit the portal. Texas is not recruiting like they were. Oklahoma is another one that could finish in the top 3. But I don't think they're going to get Braden Parks. They may not get, I don't know where Fakatu's going, but they're in on so many. And after what you just said, Olu, if you'd have asked me 4 days ago where Olu was going, I'd have said A&M. Now he commits to Notre Dame a couple of days later. Like in today's era, things can flip very, very quickly. So there's probably going to be somebody. They need to get a safety. They're probably not going to get the Gavin Williams kid. I think he's going to SC.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but it's more balanced than it's been in a while at the top. So Notre Dame might kind of sneak in there from that perspective. Is there any one player that you think that they can't lose? I'm going to go through some questions here for you in a second, but is there one guy you're like, they just can't lose this kid, and he's not yet committed?
It's Folorunsho. To be this close with a player at such a big position in need, they have to land him. And right now, they're in a great spot, but don't count out Miami. I know that there's a lot of people on their side who feel like they might be able to turn the tide pretty late. But with that being said, the Notre Dame side is still extremely confident they're going to be able to get this done. And it's a very important deal for a number of different reasons here. He fills the biggest position of need outside of quarterback. Like every single recruiting class for Notre Dame from now until the end of time, the number one position of need, regardless of who is currently on the roster, is always going to be quarterback. And then after that, when you look at what Notre Dame has done in recent years, I think it was defensive tackle. And we've already talked about this earlier. Like Notre Dame took a step in the right direction last year when they landed Elijah Golden and Tiki Hola on the interior of the defensive line. But they still have a long ways to go to make up for all of the misses at the position in the past. So if they're able to get Folorunsho, that would be huge. He's really good at getting after the quarterback. When you consider how many other skilled pass rushers they've added last year, coupled with who they could get this year, they could be elite for years to come. And just from a perception standpoint, this would be a huge win to beat out Miami, even though it's a little bit odd that like Miami has had the stranglehold over defensive linemen in the Chicago area, considering Coral Gables is a hell of a lot further away than South Bend, Indiana, at least from Chicago. So if Notre Dame was able to beat them one-on-one, it would be a huge win for them, both in terms of the class and what they're bringing in, but from a perception standpoint as well. And personally, it would make me really happy because, man, Miami fans, they're the most online fan base in the history of the world, and they are extremely confident. They like to talk a whole lot of smack, so it'd be nice for Notre Dame to get one over on them.
That is true. I think they're going to get Folorunsho. And for those that don't know, he's about 6'4", 280. He's the rare guy that is not only capable of playing D-end and D-tackle, he is a bona fide edge bender. Like his bend for his size to get around at speed rush, I don't remember a guy like that here recently. There are other pass rushers you might say is better, but for his size, he can be a run plugger too. That combo is super rare. He's only 280 right now. I expect him to play at 300, 305 when he fills out. But I think that kid's a 5-star all day, and he's being recruited that way. And I'm sure his NIL package will represent that, whether it's at Miami or Notre Dame as well. To that end, this is the hardest question I'm going to give you in the next 10 years. So here it comes. Where do you think Marcus Fakatu is going?
Well, if we're going to talk about it today, right, and there might be one answer, and then we could talk about this tomorrow, and there might be a different answer, and then on Saturday, there might be yet another different answer. But you know what it kind of reminds me of? Joey O'Brien. It's a very similar style of recruitment, because when Notre Dame first started recruiting Joey O'Brien, he wasn't like the 5-star Joey O'Brien that he ended up at. Like, he was a really talented prospect. Don't get me wrong. It's not like Notre Dame discovered a diamond in the rough and a 6'5" safety out of Pennsylvania. But it felt like Notre Dame had the early lead. And then as he started to go through the process and every other school in the country wanted him, it felt like every time he went on an official visit, there was a new favorite. Like at one point, Penn State was considered the favorite to land him. I think Clemson, he took a visit to Clemson, and then there was some serious momentum that they could get him. And then Joey O'Brien even admitted after the fact that going into his official visit to Notre Dame last summer, which was like June 12th or June 19th weekend, he thought he was going to Oregon. But he's like, well, I've got this visit scheduled. I'm going to go. I'm going to see what this is about. But in his mind, he thought he was going to Oregon. But then the visit went so well at Notre Dame, he ultimately committed there. Now he's a part of the Notre Dame roster. Fakatu is similar in that he's very impressionable, which is not a criticism. He's 17, 18 years old. It happens. But it feels like whoever has the most recent visit is then the leader. Like at one point, he was really into Oregon. Then he went to Columbus, and he was really into Ohio State. He was just on campus at Notre Dame recently. Really had a lot of positive things to say about that. But the most important thing here is that his last official visit will be to South Bend, Indiana. Marcus Freeman and this coaching staff have a great track record when it comes to closing when they get the last official visit. So as long as that's true, as long as he is scheduled to take his official visit to Notre Dame, I believe it's going to be June 15th, I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win out.
Your logic makes sense. It does. The key there is this is such a fun part of recruiting. Clemson is a big believer in taking the early visit weekend, like May 29th. They've got like 30 guys. And I'm just using them as an example. Georgia does early too.
O'Brien's first visit was to Clemson last year. I remember that.
There you go. So I get it. But if you don't get a kid like that in a Michigan or a Bama or Notre Dame or somebody gets the last visit, that can be really tough. And Notre Dame, again, this year, their big 2 weekends are the final 2 before the dead period. So they're rolling the dice. I think Freeman believes, based on history, from what you said, hey, we can get this done. A, and B, they've had Fakatu on campus a number of times already. They probably think that it'd be really unlikely for him not to visit again.
Right.
Which that would be my logic. When we come back, we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to ask a few random questions. But the big one, how many top 100 recruits, when this class is all signed and sealed, will Notre Dame come up with? That is next, right here on Locked On Irish, crossover with Locked On the Board. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Rocket Money. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You are not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming and fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. Whether you're trying to make sure you not spend too much on subscriptions, especially the ones you don't use anymore, or you just want to make sure you're spending your money wisely with those subscriptions, it'll help you with that. It also automatically categorizes your spending, so you can actually see where your money's going for each thing you do. Clothing, eating out, gas, car, anything like that. And you can set up your budget if you want. Get alerts about it and stay on top of all of your bills with Rocket Money. It just makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clear picture of what's going on with your finances. Rocket Money is a personal financial app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. All right, Tyler, you're on the clock. Top 100. How many do the Irish sign by the end of the class of 2027?
Okay. So I think the floor is 6. I think the most likely scenario is that, they've already got Olu. I think they could get Abraham Sesse. James Halter's already part of the class. Xavier Hassan, Ace Alston. So you're looking at 5 right there. And then David Folorunsho could be 6th on Friday. But then after that, you could have a ceiling that's as high as 11, which seems insane. But they're going to need some things to go their way. Obviously, there's a couple wild cards. There's Caden Henderson, the linebacker who we mentioned earlier. Right now, I would not bet that he ends up at Notre Dame, but I'm not ruling them out. Marcus Fakatu is a top 100 prospect there in the running. Albert Simeon, the interior offensive lineman out of Louisiana. If they're somehow able to get him away from LSU, that would be another massive shock, but they're in it. And then Osani Gales, the wide receiver, that's one of those where, like, Notre Dame's not really, no one's really talking about Notre Dame that much, but they feel some level of confidence, so they're in the mix there. And then you've got some guys who are like Julius Jones Jr., who it really is just a matter of, like, does he end up in the top 100 in the class? Jackson Vaughn, same deal. Like, right now, he's just outside the top 100 because he reclassified. Could Champ Mons fall all the way up? So I think the floor, like the absolute bare minimum, is 6, but they could get up to 11, maybe even 13, depending on where some of these future commits end up in the rankings.
Yeah, there's Braden Parks, Leighton Von Brandt. I mean,
Yep.
it's insane.
I didn't even mention Von Brandt. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm forgetting guys, and that was never the case in the past.
There's so many, it's hard to keep it all straight. And I'm not trying to be funny.
No.
It literally is. In my opinion, the only team that will likely, of course, there's still a long way to go, sign more top 100 recruits than Notre Dame will be the Aggies.
Yeah.
That would be my guess based on how they're recruiting. But again, as I noted earlier in the show, and I was dead wrong on this, I thought the Aggies were going to get Olu Olubobola, and a few days later he committed to Notre Dame. I didn't think they had a shot, and they committed it a couple of days later. That also shows you that things can move very quickly with one Notre Dame visit. What was it? He went to the spring game, if I remember, and then he fell in love. So there you go.
He was on campus 3 weeks ago, and just getting him on campus was a win because when he scheduled his first 10, Notre Dame wasn't even on the list, which shows you just how quickly things can move. And to your point about Texas A&M, like they were the leader for a long time, but then they recently made a strong push to get Mark Matthews, the number one tackle in the class. And it's like, if you just take your sights off a prospect for 1 second, you don't even know who could jump in. And Notre Dame has proven that they can swoop in on a prospect at any time and ultimately close the deal.
That is true. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up this to be fair. We're talking pretty positively about Notre Dame here, but is there any position you're a little bit concerned with Notre Dame recruiting?
Okay, I'll give you one for each side of the ball, but the one that stands out the most is linebacker. I really like Amari Irvin. It's good that they have him, but they need at least one more, and it's a position where I feel like they don't really have a great grasp of the board. Like if it's not Henderson, I'm not sure there's a ton of clarity there. Maybe the coaching staff feels differently, and this might have to do with the fact that they've basically had 3 different linebacker coaches just in this offseason. Max Bulla, obviously, who'd been there for a few years, he left to go to Michigan State. Then they decided to move Al Washington from D-line to linebackers, and then he leaves to join the Miami Dolphins. And then they hire Brian John Marie, so they certainly have some ground to make up there. I think it's fair to grant them some level of patience, but still, you'd like them to be a little bit further along at this stage. Now, if they do go out there and they get Henderson out of Florida, who is the number 1 linebacker in the country, then literally nothing else matters. He's that good. And they would be just fine taking Irvin and Henderson. But it's a position that they haven't recruited super well in recent years. Now, it's not as much of a priority, obviously, because there's typically only 2 linebackers on the field at a time in the way that Notre Dame plays their base defense now. But outside of Landon Cavier and Man Framo, who are 2 studs, don't get me wrong, it's been a lot of developmental guys, so they need to nail it with this class because we're probably looking at a lot of turnover at the position after the season, like Cavier, Drake Bowen, hell, Jane Osbury could even go to the NFL depending on how the season goes for him, and then Jalen Sneed is going to be out of eligibility. So that is the one where I'm like actually concerned. And then I'd also mention tight end just because like it's great that they got Titus Hawk. I'm really excited about him, but when you're in the running for Seneca Driver and Jackson Dollar, you probably get your hopes up a little bit too high. So we'll see if they're able to, stay in the fight there with either one of those guys, if they're able to cause a late flip, if Notre Dame ends up having the season that we all expect them to have. But I'm not nearly as concerned at tight end as it is probably more. It just has more to do with like wishful thinking about what could have been. But linebacker, I do think they need to get some answers here soon.
I think linebacker was goofy. The board was messed up. You could tell a certain man that is now in East Lansing stopped recruiting at the end of the game. It was blatant. Yeah. And once that happened, that's still on Freeman, though. You got to know that, but they were kind of behind. Last question for you here. Overall, do you feel that Notre Dame is positioning itself for more or less something very unfortunate happens, like a 5-year run where they're in contention for the national title at least every other year? Like after this season, they're probably going to lose Carr. But outside of a year where their quarterback's just completely up, the trenches, or even receiver is up at Notre Dame. Is there any reason to believe this isn't a top 5 program? Is another way you could look at it.
As long as Marcus Freeman is the head coach at Notre Dame, I have no doubts they are going to be competing at the top every single year. Obviously, Marcus Freeman is a very skilled recruiter. We knew that when he got the job, but you need buy-in from the top down, especially at a place like Notre Dame, to gather the funds necessary to recruit at this level. And Notre Dame has that right now. To be honest with you, I never really expected the university, like the administrators, the board of trustees, to be so aligned, we're using another Brian Kelly word today, with the football program and the fact that they continue to go all in. Like coming off the run of the national championship, it makes sense, right? There's going to be an influx of NIL because all the people that got to go to those games and just experience it as a fan, you're like, wow, that was really fun. We should invest into football. And then they have a disappointing season last year, and you think, well, are people going to be like, well, we invested all this money, it didn't amount to anything? No, they've doubled down. They're spending money and they're going all in on a tackle like Olu, like we talked about earlier, who's going to be third string next year. They're spending money on guys like Jane Sanders, who is going to be a backup this year, but started a few games last year at Michigan, and they bring him in the transfer portal just to add depth to the room. You're not able to do that unless you have a lot of NIL money and complete backing from the university and a head coach who's really savvy, understands where the sport is going, and is willing to adapt and go all in. And Notre Dame has that right now in Marcus Freeman. So as long as he's the head coach there, I feel like they are going to be at the top of the sport every single year.
He is Tyler Wojcick. I am Brian Smith. Tyler, please tell everybody where they can find your work.
So Locked On Irish, we're still doing it daily here, even in May. Now, normally this is kind of a downtime, but as you can tell based on everything that we have talked about today, it is anything but. Recruiting has been red hot lately, and I expect that to continue. So we're going to be doing it daily. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on social media as well, at Locked On Irish on X, and then at Locked On Irish Pod on Instagram and TikTok. So if you can't get enough Notre Dame football coverage, you know where to find us.
Absolutely. You can find the Portal Podcast all the same places. You can check out Tyler with Locked On Irish, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, and of course on YouTube. This has been a crossover, Locked On Irish and Locked On the Portal.